finally really did it. You maniacs! You blew it up! Ah, damn you! God damn you all to hell! Hi guys, David O'Sullivan here, and in this video I thought I'd rank all of the films in the Planet of the Apes franchise. That's right, a couple of weeks ago War for the Planet of the Apes came out, the concluding chapter, it seems, in this new rebooted series of Planet of the Apes films, which I love, by the way. I think it's one of the best trilogies we've ever seen, especially in modern times, and I think War for the Planet of the Apes was a really great conclusion to this new trilogy for the character of Caesar. But I'm also a big fan of the original Apes films. That's right, we've got the classic 1968 original. It's one of my favourite films of all time, actually, is that original Planet of the Apes. And the sequels, okay, the sequels aren't that great, but I still really like the sequels to that original film. They're kind of guilty pleasures for me, almost. I mean, some are better than others. I kind of like to ignore the Tim Burton remake, but the reason I thought I would do this video is, it's been a couple of weeks since War came out, but I recently just rewatched all of the original films back to back. I didn't plan on doing this, but as soon as I recently just finished watching them all, I thought I may as well do a ranking video. What's the point in watching them all back to back if I don't do a video in which I talk about them? So, you know, I wasn't planning on doing this, but after I finished watching them all, I thought I may as well do this video. And so yeah, I'm basically going to rank all of the Planet of the Apes songs we've had, all 9 I think there is, from worst, and I'm working my way up to the best. And so without any further ado, let's kick this off with number 9, and coming in at number 9 I've got Tim Burton's 2001 remake. And yeah, this isn't a terrible film. It's not a really bad movie, not at all. From a technical standpoint, it's okay, I suppose. I mean, it's been a while since I've rewatched this one. I've got to be honest, this is the only one on the list that I didn't rewatch. I rewatched all the originals, I've rewatched the new ones like multiple times the past couple of weeks, but I didn't go back and revisit this one, because to be honest with you, I really don't care for it. I just like to pretend it doesn't exist. I kind of always forget about it, and then I remember it again, I'm like, oh god, why do I just hate the idea that this movie exists. I don't know why they decided to make this film, because like I said, it's not a terrible film really, but what I hate about this film is that it was just so unnecessary. It's just one of those pointless, really unnecessary remakes that they just didn't need to make. I really don't understand why they made this film, and why Tim Burton did it either. I mean, it's not really a Tim Burton kind of film. I really don't understand what drew him to this project. It was dubbed a kind of reimagining of the Planet of the Apes mythology, but it's kind of just a straightforward remake of the original, and the new and different things they try to do just really don't work. They try to throw some new twists and surprises in there that just really fall flat, and it just seemed really odd to me why you would try and reinvent and rework and reimagine a beloved timeless classic, because the original 68 film is without a doubt a classic film that I don't really have any major problems with, so I really don't understand why they decided to reinvent and rework and reimagine that film for a modern audience. I don't understand why they decided to do it, and as I said, it really didn't work. Really, the only reason why this movie exists is because someone, I don't know if it was Tim Burton or whoever, thought it would be a good idea to remake Planet of the Apes just with modern, updated, better makeup. And really, if that was the only reason why they decided to make this film, then that just really confuses me, because, like I said, not only is the original a classic, but the makeup and the practical effects employed within that film were groundbreaking and revolutionary for their time, so nothing really needed improving or updating for a modern audience. And so yeah, the makeup, the effects does look a lot better for sure, but that's kind of it. You know, there was no improvements really to be made with story or characters, and it's not really a great film either. It's kind of just like, it was okay, I suppose, and that's what I really don't like about this film. It's not terrible, not by any means, but I don't understand why they needed to make it. It just felt so pointless, was so unnecessary, and it's really weird, because some of the original sequels aren't that great for sure, but with this Tim Burton one, it's really like the odd one out. It's like the black sheep in the family that everyone always forgets about. It's like not really connected to any of the others. It's just this one little weird film on its own that really just didn't need to happen. And as I said, they tried to throw some new and cool different things in there, And obviously, if you've seen the original, it's got one of the most iconic, memorable twist endings of all time. And this movie it seemed like it was trying to outdo that, trying to like throw some more new crazy twists that people hadn't seen. But the only thing is, the so-called twists and surprises they threw into this film just were complete misfires. They really didn't work. It just fell flat in so many respects, and especially with that big twist ending. I was like, what? It just missed its mark so hard, and so it comes in at the bottom of the pile for me because, yes, it's not a horrible film, not really by any means. I can't really remember it that well because it's been a long time since I watched it, but I just really don't like this film because I'm such a fan of the classic original and of all the other Apes films, that this one just really sticks out to me, and I just hate having to acknowledge that the movie exists. So yeah, Tim Burton's 2001 remake comes in at the bottom of the pile for me at number 9. Now coming in at number 8, I've got Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Now this was the fifth and final instalment in the original series that followed Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and I've got to be honest with you, I don't dislike this film. I actually like it. Is it a great film? No, not by any means, but I still do kind of like it, and that's the thing about these original films for me. I've got a real soft spot for these original films. Maybe I'm a little biased because I love the original 68 films so much that even some of the not so good sequels I still kind of like, and they're kind of guilty pleasures for me. But Battle, I think, would be the lowest ranking out of all of them because I do have some problems with some of the other sequels, but with Battle, it was the closing chapter kind of in the original series, but it just kind of felt like by that point the budgets had been cut so much, and rewatching the film, I kind of liked it from a storytelling point of view. Not really much of interest actually happens, but I still kind of liked it, and I could still kind of follow what was going on. But the only thing is, the whole movie just kind of looked really dark. It looked like they just shot it on really cheap cameras. It almost felt like a really low budget student film where they had just like no budget, and they're really just trying to make the most decent film they could possible. And so, you know, the kind of the Apes films in this original series did kind of go downhill. I don't dislike this film. I still like it. There's still elements in this film that I like. I think it's just it's probably the worst out of the original series. There are some things I like in it. I like how it kind of ties into the original films almost, because if you know anything about the original series, there's a kind of time travel involved. Halfway through they go back in time, and so with Battle it's almost not only just a continuation of Escape and Conquest, but it's also kind of a prequel almost to the original film and Beneath the Planet of the Apes. So I like there's like certain elements in the story that are kind of almost kind of foreshadowing the events of the original two films, and they kind of help to kind of bridge that gap between the prequels kind of almost and the originals, where it's kind of like setting up things that will eventually kind of lead into that world that we see in the original. I like those kind of elements. We see how the beginning of the ape civilization, the beginning of the kind of the mutant human civilization as well, the ruins of the bomb city. But yeah, the effects didn't look that great. You could tell they had a very small budget. I mean, the makeup with the apes, it still kind of looks alright, to be honest with you, but you can tell it's just guys running around in ape masks. It's not that believable. With the original film, I can give it a pass because they're actually meant to be humanoid apes. But with some of the later sequels, and especially Battle, you're kind of meant to buy into the fact that these are just kind of apes that have kind of naturally evolved almost in just the space of not that long at all. And it's like it just seems like they're just people running around in ape masks. You can't really buy into the fact that they are apes really. And even though there was a story to this film that I liked, it like not much of interest really happens. It's not necessarily a good story. It has a story, but it's not necessarily a well thought out story. It kind of felt like almost that by this point they kind of run out of ideas. And there were some cool elements to it, but it's almost felt like they were kind of making it up as they were going along. They didn't really know what they wanted to do. And it kind of, when you're watching the film, especially after watching Escape and Conquest, which, I do kind of like those films as well, actually. This time it kind of felt like the one that was just unnecessary. They could have really kind of ended it at Conquest, especially if you take the original ending of Conquest into account, which I'll talk about in a second. This film, it kind of becomes a little superfluous. It kind of becomes irrelevant. I know a lot of die-hard fans of Conquest as well really don't like this film and like to pretend it doesn't exist. I understand that, because if you take the original ending of Conquest into account, this film really doesn't make any sense, and it's kind of just completely unnecessary. But Actually, I don't really hate this film. I do kind of like elements in it. It just, I think it's probably the weakest of the original series for me. Now coming in at number 7, just above Battle for me, is Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And the reason I put Conquest just above Battle is I do have some quite big problems with Conquest as well. But the thing that edged Conquest out above Battle for me was that with Battle it almost felt like they didn't really know what they wanted to do. They didn't really have a strong, clear idea as far as kind of what we want this movie to be. But with Conquest, it did feel like they had a real strong, clear vision and idea of what they wanted to do with that film. It wasn't executed as well as I think it could have been, but it was the stronger, for me, of Battle and Conquest, in that they kind of had the themes to it and the social commentary. It's a little bit on the nose and it's a little bit heavy-handed at times. That's probably my biggest problem with Conquest, but it did feel like they had a stronger, clearer idea and vision of what they wanted this movie to be, where Battle, it kind of felt like they were just scrambling and they didn't really know what they wanted to do. So that's what kind of edges Conquest out above Battle for me. And like I said, I do like the ideas in this film. I do like the concept of what it is. It's almost like rewatching it, it almost reminded me of a kind of an Apes version of V for Vendetta, kind of, because I couldn't really remember everything about this film. Battle I'd almost kind of forgot entirely, and I remember the elements from Conquest, but rewatching it, it really struck me as kind of, it was almost like an Apes version of V for Vendetta, kind of. So I kind of like that. But even though, as I said, I like the ideas and the concept of this film, I don't think it was as well executed as I think it could have been. With Battle, there is more of a storyline to it. It's not necessarily a good story, but there is more of a storyline there. But with Conquest, there's not really much of a story. It's kind of apes are slaves, then apes revolt. That's kind of it. So rewatching it, it was kind of a little bit of a tough watch for me, because I do like a lot of the ideas, a lot of the themes and the issues that are explored within the film. But as far as the story is concerned, another thing that really struck me watching this film, which I hadn't really thought of before, but especially with these new films into account, Rise in the new series is basically a better made, more well done version of Conquest. There's a lot of similarities there, and obviously Rise owes a lot to Conquest. There's a lot of things that are almost kind of directly taken as far as kind of imagery and certain things that occur and events that happen in Conquest that are almost kind of taken right from that and put into Rise. And Rise, for me, is just a way better version of Conquest, with a better story and characters that you care about a whole lot more, and you can get much more emotionally invested in that. Conquest, it's kind of similar to Rise, but it's just not as well done and not as well executed, as I said. I like how daring this movie was and how bold it was with the social commentary and the themes and whatnot. But at the same time, similar to Battle, you can't really buy into the fact that these are apes, because it just looks like guys running around in ape suits with ape masks on, and I'm like, these are supposed to be apes, aren't they? I mean, it's only been 20 years since Escape, and now have they already evolved to being almost human-like? I mean, none of them can talk, apart from Caesar, obviously, but they're almost human-like already. I mean, I don't really, that was a big problem for me. Like, I can't really buy into the fact that they are apes, because they're not even really walking like apes. They're all upright like humans already, and it's only been 20 years since the last film. So, and there's some storytelling issues as far as the fact that there's, we're meant to buy into the fact that there's a plague that wiped out cats and dogs, and our apes have taken over as the new pets, and it's like, I mean, they could have done it a little bit better than that. And like I said, that's why kind of Rise is, like, for me, like the much better version. It was a lot more kind of smarter, and you can buy into that a whole lot more. Rise felt a lot more realistic, a lot more convincing. Like, if this was to happen in the real world, Rise is probably more along the lines of how it will go down. But that being said, I still like Conquest, because it's kind of like an alternate reality. It's like almost like a V for Vendetta, like I said, for example. It's like this dystopian alternate reality future in which apes are kind of now used as slaves, and then they end up just rebelling and fighting back in that big revolution they have at the end. But my big problems with Conquest, as I mentioned, is I think it could have been so much better executed, because there's some great ideas in there, but as far as the story is concerned and characters, we just can't really get as invested as much as I would want to. The social commentary in Conquest, I think, was a little bit too heavy-handed. It's very on the nose. Literally, apes are slaves, and then they riot, and then they fight back and revolt. I think I don't really put the movie down a whole lot for that, because it came out in like the late 60s, early 70s, so I think it was really bold and daring and audacious and ambitious for the film to tackle subject matter like that and have social commentary as strong and powerful as that in a film that came out in that time. But when you're watching it, it does feel very heavy-handed and a little bit too on the nose. So you're watching it and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. You can rein back a little bit here. And that's kind of why the new movies are a little bit better. Well, a lot better than these original sequels, is that the social commentary is still there, but it's a lot more subtle. It's not as heavy-handed as it is in these original films. And next up on my list, coming in at number 6, is Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And I thought I remembered liking this one a whole lot less, and it's still not a great film, not really by any means. But rewatching this film, I kind of actually enjoy it a lot more than I thought I was going to. It definitely has its problems, which I'll touch on in a second, but what I love about this film is, yes, it's very weird and crazy and bananas, but I kind of love it for that. I mean, it's the very first sequel to the classic original, and they didn't just play it safe at all. And, you know, nowadays, if a film like Planet of the Apes came out, they would probably play it kind of safe with the sequel, because they don't want to do anything too risky or out there or different. But with Beneath, I liked it because, as I said, it was just so different and totally just weird and out there. And rewatching this film, I just love how just crazy and insane it is, and how they do something quite different from the original, where we explore what's beneath the Planet of the Apes, and we discover this new mystery of these kind of mutant humans that are living underground, and that's kind of really quite like hits you. It's like really quite different from the original, with a lot of those new elements in there. One of my biggest criticisms is that the first act pretty much is it's kind of a retread of the original film. We get another astronaut land, he discovers the apes. It's kind of basically just they do the same thing as what the original film did, which is kind of a shame, because once it moves past that and gets to what actually is beneath Planet of the Apes and discovers the mutant humans, it's kind of a lot more interesting. There's a lot more kind of different kind of unique elements there to it, which sets it apart from the original. But with that first act, it's basically just redoing what we've already seen in the original. It kind of felt a little pointless, a little unnecessary, because we've already seen a whole movie dedicated to that with the original. The whole original film is all about that, and they kind of just redo it all over again in the first act of this film. And obviously there's reasons for that. Charlton Heston didn't want to come back. He only agreed to come back if he could be in like the first 2 minutes and then disappear and then come back right at the end and blow the planet up. So they had to explain, okay, where he's gone and bring a new guy in. So I think they handled it in the best possible way for the circumstances that they were faced with. Like, oh, we haven't got Charlton Heston, what are we going to do? So they, send out another astronaut on a rescue mission, and then he's got to try and figure out what's going on. And Nova's back from the original. She didn't really get a whole lot to do, but I like that they brought her back. And obviously I like that they discover what's beneath the Planet of the Apes and these mutant humans, which is a very kind of new, shocking element that wasn't in the original film at all. And so I like that this film is very different. It's very flawed as well. It's not a great film, but I do like that it just feels very just weird and bizarre and different and totally nuts and out there. And the reason why I put it above Conquest is that, okay, maybe you can make an argument that Conquest is the stronger film, but for me, rewatching Conquest, it felt like a bit of a slog. It was a bit tough to get through. It felt a lot longer than it was. Beneath, for me, was a lot easier for me to watch. It went a lot quicker. And funny enough, Beneath is actually longer than Conquest, but rewatching them, Conquest felt a lot longer and it felt a lot tougher to get through, where Beneath doesn't actually feel that long. I always thought Beneath was the shortest, but it's not. It's actually longer than Conquest. It was the easier to rewatch for me. And the original, this is quite kind of dark and nihilistic, but this Beneath is even more so. It's a very dark, very nihilistic film where it starts out at a point of hopelessness and just goes down and down and down and down and ends with the whole planet just blowing up. It's totally nuts and crazy, and it was basically just Charlton Heston's best attempt at ending the franchise. He's like, I'm just going to blow the planet out now. I can ensure no more sequels. Unfortunately, they were still able to carry on and work around that. But even though they had those creative obstacles they had to work around with Charlton Heston not wanting to come back, I think it actually made the movie better and actually made the sequels better. They had to work around these obstacles they were facing. I think it actually worked in their favour. The ending is just completely nuts. It's like, but I kind of love it for that. It's just totally crazy and out there and just, apes are killing humans, and just there's the mutant humans there as well that are trying to kill everyone off as well. They've got this bomb that they want to blow the planet up, and just everyone's killing each other. They're all just killing themselves off, and then Charles Neston just blows the planet up. And it's the end of the film. Like, I can't think of any other film where it just ends with everyone killing each other and then blowing the planet up. I mean, it's absolutely insane, but I kind of love it for that. And next up on the list, coming in at number 5, I have Escape from the Planet of the Apes. So for me, this is the best out of the sequels to the original. I actually think this one is a really good movie. It's not a great film either, but I actually think this is a really good film. Like I said, I think it's the best out of the sequels to that original film. And this actually came straight after Belief, and you're probably thinking, how the hell could they carry the franchise on after they blew the planet up? But they came up with some really cool creative idea of, okay, what if we work time travel into this and send some apes back in time to kind of present day Earth? And so these apes, Cornelius and Zero from the original films, are now in 70s America. So it was very different. It immediately set it apart from all the other Apes films, especially obviously the two that came before it. It's like, this isn't in the Planet of the Apes now. We're not following humans in the apes world. We're following apes now in the humans world. So I really like that about this film. It's that it was kind of like just a complete reversal of the original film, but also being very different from that film as well. So there's some light-hearted comedic elements in this as well, where it kind of almost starts off as like a fish out of water comedy. I mean, there's still some darker elements to it as well, but it starts off as like this fish out of water comedy. And for me, that doesn't bug me, because obviously with Humans in the Apes world, it's going to be like a horror film, but with the other way around, it's going to play out very differently, you know. And I like the fact that it starts out with them like revered as celebrities. Well, it doesn't actually start out like that. It starts out with them being questioned and interrogated and trying to figure out what's going on, and then they end up becoming celebrities. Everyone loves them, and then it immediately takes a very dark turn. And it is a bit of a tonal shift in that it goes from a fish out of water, fun, light-hearted comedy to suddenly going very dark. But for me, it works because I feel like, you know, obviously it's just a completely crazy, ludicrous, fantastical science fiction film. But I feel like if this was to happen in the real world, it's probably more along the lines of how it would go down, that people will probably be all happy and all for it at first, and then it would probably just suddenly go very dark. I mean, we see things like this happen in the real world all the time, where there's a public reaction to it at first in one light, and it completely changes very quickly. And for me, it works. Yeah, it is a bit of a tonal shift, but it is a little jarring, I suppose. But for me, it does work. And I like the fact that it just suddenly goes dark. If it stayed as a comedy for the rest of the film, I probably wouldn't have liked the film as much, because I like the comedy to it, don't get me wrong. I think it's probably got the best comedy out of any of the Apes films. Especially when they're being first questioned. They're like, does everyone talk? And then Cornelius is like, only when she lets me. I do love comedic elements to it, but then obviously they spoon feed some of the darker elements into it as well, where they're kind of being interrogated, and then we discover actually what happened and what Zero actually did to humans in the Planet of the Apes, and then we get these flashbacks, and it's almost kind of like horror-like in a way, and that's what I kind of like about some of these early Planet of the Apes films. Not necessarily Escape, but maybe with that flashback sequence, that it's like they kind of are almost like horror films in disguise. It would be pretty horrific to be in that kind of situation in a Planet of Apes. And I love how they kind of while she's being interrogated, we're just seeing these flashes of the original film. It's almost like a horror film, kind of. But yeah, and I like how they kind of set up and tease what's going to come with Conquest and Battle. We actually see the whole ape revolution play out and the beginnings of the ape civilization. It's almost like Terminator in a way. Nowhere near as well done, but you know, when they go back in time and then we actually end up seeing it all play out in what becomes almost prequels to the original film, where they happen slightly differently, but then it ultimately ends up becoming still the Planet of Apes. But yeah, I do actually really like Escape. It's probably my favourite of the sequels to the original. I don't really have any big problems with it. Like I said, there is a bit of a kind of jarring tonal shift where it goes from being like a fish out of water comedy to then being a lot darker with how it ends. That doesn't really bug me. I suppose my only problem, it's not really relevant to this film, but more along the lines of like, okay, you have to just kind of suspend disbelief and just forget about that in order to take this film for what it is. It's like, it immediately starts with these apes now back in time on the spaceship, and you're like, okay, well, it's a cool way to open the movie, but at the same time you're thinking, how the hell did that happen? How the hell were they able to fix the spaceship, repair it, and then fly back in time? You just got to kind of suspend disbelief and kind of just just kind of just forget about that and ignore that. And if you put that aside, it's actually a really good movie, I think, and I actually found it really quite enjoyable. So there we go. Now, coming in at number 4 on my list is, I think, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And I really like this film. As I mentioned earlier, for me, it's almost like a better, more well-made version of Conquest. There's a lot of similar kind of recurring elements to it, with a kind of ape called Caesar who becomes intelligent and leads this revolt against the humans, and they rebel and fight back. But it's a much better version of Conquest for me. The social commentary isn't as, like, you know, overt and in your face and heavy-handed as it is in Conquest. I mean, they're different in a lot of ways. I like Conquest for what it is, but Rise is the much better film. As I mentioned earlier, there's more of a storyline to it that you can really get invested in. The characters as well, with Caesar, played by Andy Serkis, is a great character that you can really get attached to, and you can, even though he's an ape, you can really, you know, feel for him and the relationship that he has with James Franco's character as well. And also the whole Alzheimer's element to the story, where it starts off with James Franco's just obsessed with getting this Alzheimer's cure, and you're like, why does he feel so strongly about this? And then we get home and we're like, oh my god, so his dad's got Alzheimer's, and that's why he's so passionate, not just because he's a scientist and he desperately wants to find this cure, but it's personal for him as well. He's got a dad who's got this disease and he's desperately trying to cure his dad, so he's got a very strong emotional undercurrent to it there as well, which kind of Conquest didn't really have. So Conquest, you ultimately don't really care that much, but with Rise you do. It's a lot more emotional, it's a lot more dramatic. Yeah, I think Rise, it was really great. I don't think it's the best out of these new Apes films, but that's not to say that it isn't good. I just think Dawn and War are better, but I can totally understand why anyone would say Rise was their favourite, or why they think Rise was the best. It's just, for me, I think it started off really good and then it just got better. Of course, with the new CGI, with the performance capture, with the actors actually playing these photo-real apes, is so much more believable. I never had a problem with the makeup and the practical effects in the original films, but obviously with the new effects they have in these new films, it's so much more believable because they actually look like photoreal apes. I mean, the effects and the CGI don't hold up as well in Rise as they do in Dawn and War, but it's still great. It's just that the technology is always improving. It's just getting better and better each film. Like Dawn was even better than Rise, and then War, unbelievably, was even better than Dawn. But, you know, it doesn't look as good now, although it still looks great. I'm really nitpicking here. So, yeah, Rise isn't my favourite of the new films, but it's still a really great film that I really enjoy. So there we go, Rise of the Planet of the Apes coming in at number 4. And next up on my list, coming in at number 3, I've got Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and I absolutely love this film. I think I've said it time and time again, but I think it's one of the best blockbusters we've gotten so far this decade. I think it's a phenomenal film. A lot of people were blown away with Rise because they weren't expecting much. I was blown away with Dawn. Not that I didn't think it was going to be good, but obviously I really enjoyed Rise. But I was like, oh, and the director dropped out. We got a new director coming in here. He didn't really have a lot of time to make this movie. And I'm like, oh, is it going to be as good as the last one? But I went into Dawn and I was just blown away. It's one of those movies where every time I've gone back and rewatched it, revisited it, I've liked it even more and more and more. Because I did have some little nitpicky problems with it the first time I saw it. I was like, the human characters aren't as great as the apes. And it's kind of true. You know, you're obviously more interested and more engaged with the apes. But the more I've rewatched it, the more I've liked all the human stuff as well, because the human storyline with Jason Clarke and Kerry Russell and Gary Oldman is very emotionally engaging as well. Like, some of the most emotional scenes are scenes with just Gary Oldman when he discovers those photos on his iPod when it comes back on and he just breaks down into tears. That really hit me when I saw the movie. So you can't really bash the movie for like, oh, the stuff with the humans isn't that great, because the stuff with the humans is really good still. It's just the ape stuff is even better, and you're really way more interested in it and engaged with that. And I think it was the best decision they made with War, was making it almost entirely from the apes' point of view. But I still really like Dawn and how it's a split perspective, where we see it from the apes' point of view and we see it from the humans' point of view as well, and it's kind of ultimately them struggling to coexist. A lot of the humans have been wiped out on the Simian flu in a previous film, and I love how Matt Reeves, who came in and directed the hell out of this film, he did such a great job, opened the film in the woods with Caesar and his kind of ape clan now living in the woods as this community of apes. The dawn of the ape civilization, if you will, we're seeing that now play out, and it's so great. There's quite a while into it, about half an hour into it, maybe 20 minutes before we see the humans, and that ultimately creates the conflict of them trying to kind of, or struggling to kind of coexist. And It's great, and what I love about Dawn so much, and the best phrase I can give it, is that it's not just a great science fiction action genre movie, is that it's a real great drama. It's almost like a character piece, like with Caesar there, and just the relationships between the characters and the drama and the conflict and the tension between the characters. It is just so good, and you can just get so emotionally invested and engaged, and it's just so operatic. It's almost, when I watch this movie, it's almost like a Shakespearean family tragedy, you know, with what goes on between Caesar and Koba, who is played brilliantly, by the way, by Toby Kebbell. I still contend to this day that both Andy Serkis and Toby Kebbell should have been nominated for Best Actor and Supporting Actor. It didn't happen, but I think they should have, because they were both great. Like, Toby Kebbell really blew me away in that, because he came in new in Dawn. I'm like, oh, is he going to do a great job in this? But oh my god, he knocked it out of the park with Koba. He was so great. He's one of my favourite characters in that movie, and the whole kind of film essentially revolves around the tension between Caesar and Koba. He's following Caesar, but he's kind of reluctantly following Caesar, and it's essentially a story of betrayal and tragedy, where, you know, Koba just is rebelling against Caesar, and like he wants to, you know, take the apes in a different direction. And it's just so powerful and so emotional, because Koba's not only a great villain, but you can just really feel for him. It really hits you, because you can just so understand where he's coming from, because he was mistreated for years and tortured and experimented upon in labs. So you get it. You get why you would hate humans. That whole human work. It's like, oh my god, it's such a great scene. It really hits you. And you completely get it, you know, why he would hate humans, but also you completely understand Caesar's point of view as well. His son's like, Koba said we should hate humans, and Caesar's like, from humans, Koba learned only hate, nothing else. And it's like, wow, it's just so great, because it's treated so intelligently. It's such a smart, sophisticated blockbuster. It doesn't even really feel like a blockbuster, a stereotypical blockbuster movie when you're watching it, because it's so well written, so well acted, and it's so powerful and so emotional. I can make an argument for this being number one. As you can tell, these top three are absolutely amazing in my opinion. I love all of them, but put Dawn here at number 3, because I think the sequel was maybe even better. Which leads me on to my number 2, which is, of course, War for the Planet of the Apes. It's the most recent Apes film, the concluding chapter, almost, it seems, to the Caesar trilogy, if you want to call it that, of Apes films, where they're kind of almost prequels tying into the original. Yeah, I mean, I did not think this movie had any chance of topping what they did with Dawn, but for me, I think they might have done. I mean, I hate having to compare War and Dawn, because I love both of them, and I can make an argument for Dawn being the better one, I can make an argument for War for being the better one, but ultimately I decided on War being just above Dawn, because, yeah, I don't know, like I said, I don't like comparing them, because I think they're both great, but they're both very different as well. That's what I love so much about them, because not only are they both really great films that I really love, but they're very different kinds of films. Like I said, Dawn's almost like a Shakespearean tragedy, and then War's almost like some classic epic, you know, like a biblical epic almost. It sounds crazy, but it's true. Just with Caesar and the character arc of Caesar and the journey that he goes on throughout the film. And I love how this kind of just continues on the story from Dawn, whilst taking it in a very different direction and surprising ways as well. And that's what I loved about Dawn. It was like continuing the story of Caesar from Rise, but in a very different film. And War did exactly the same thing. It wasn't like Dawn. It wasn't just them doing the same thing again, because that worked the last time. They did something very different with War. Like I said, it was almost like a biblical epic. It was almost like some kind of just war epic, revenge western. Like, there was elements of lots of other genres blended together, and that's what I love so much about War. I love films that can take elements, blend together elements from so many different genres and themes and styles into one film, and make such an incredible, unique experience to watch. And that's what I love so much about this film. And as I mentioned, just the character arc of Caesar, where it's built up upon these previous two films, where we see where it started in Rise and continued in Dawn, and ultimately comes to an end in War. And it's just such an emotionally satisfying conclusion to a trilogy, one of the most emotionally satisfying conclusions to a trilogy I think we've ever had, because you're just so invested in these characters and their story, because we've seen them grow and evolve and change, and seen this whole story play out over the course of these three films. It's almost like a Lord of the Rings kind of thing in a way, but then they almost feel like their own separate detached films also. But we've got this through line of Caesar's character arc and his storyline that carries through those films, and it's just so satisfying, it's so fulfilling to watch, and you just care so much. I think one of the reasons why I put War above Dawn, I mean, I was very emotionally invested with Dawn, but with War, it was even more emotional for me. It really hit me. It's currently my favourite film of 2017, and I've got it my number one best film of the year so far, I think. And because it just hit me so much, there were so many scenes, even just small character moments, really, where Caesar just decided, this is an example, one that really hit me, where Caesar just decided to leave to go off on this just journey of revenge by himself. And then we just see Maurice and Rocky and Luca come along because, oh my God, I was almost in tears by that point. It just really hit me. They hold so much dear to Caesar. Like, they so much of like where they are, what they've become, and is because of Caesar. They just can't leave him. They just can't let him go. They have to go along with him. They just can't let him do it by himself. And oh my God, that really hit me. And just so many moments like that, just small character moments, really. And obviously when Caesar's like imprisoned in the concentration camp, and the little girl just comes up and shows compassion and mercy. I think Dawn's a much more of the operatic, just Shakespearean tragedy, story of betrayal and drama. I love it. I think it's great. But what I love about War is that it's almost a lot more subtle. Like, it's very powerful, maybe even more emotional, but it's a lot more subdued. It doesn't even really feel like a typical blockbuster action movie when you're watching it, because it's like some classic epic from the 50s or something, but just with these technologically advanced photoreal apes. It's just such a kind of bizarre thing where you're seeing just a mixture of just classic, old-fashioned, old-school storytelling with just these amazing technological photoreal apes portrayed by these actors giving phenomenal performances, and it all comes together just to make such an amazing cinematic experience and a fantastic film for me. So there we go, War of the Planet of the Apes. And you may think, how the hell could anything top that? But for me, and War comes very close. I can make an argument for War being number one, but I just held this film so close to my heart that it has to be number one. So coming in at number one, it's the classic original, the 1968 Planet of the Apes. That's right. And this just had to be number one. As much as I love these new films, War and Dawn and even Rise, I think the original has to be number one. Not just because it was the first one, not just because it's the one that started it all, but obviously these new movies owe everything. They owe a lot to the original films. And the first film was the first one to kick it all off. But not just that alone. I think it was, and it is, a fantastic film. I think it's not only a classic, for me it is a timeless classic, but I genuinely think it is a fantastic film. Okay, so some of the sequels are a bit schlocky, they're a bit kind of B-movie, kind of guilty pleasure kind of films, but I don't think that's the case with the original at all. I think the original is an absolutely fantastic film. I think it's one of the best science fiction films ever made. I put it in my top 5 favourite films of all time as well, so obviously this film is very dear to my heart. Because, I remember watching this film, not knowing the twist. I mean, I think it would be suck for someone to watch this now for the first time, because it's so heavily ingrained in pop culture. I think even if you hadn't seen the film yet, you probably know the twist, and it's absolutely everywhere. It's been parodied everywhere. Jokes been made out of it. The Simpsons, you name it. It's even on the DVD cover, massive spoiler. But I remember watching this. I can't remember the very first time I watched it, but I do remember watching it for the first time, not knowing the twist, and being just completely just shocked and awestruck at that ending. And for me, I think it is the best twist ending to a movie of all time. I think it's just the most iconic, the most memorable, the most just wow. But it's not just a great twist ending. I think it's a great film as well. I mean, a lot of people criticise the movie for maybe it not holding up, or maybe it's not actually a great movie. It's just okay with a great twist. I completely reject that notion entirely. I love this entire film. Maybe it's just because I hold it close to my heart, and it's one of my favourite films when I was a kid, and it's one of my personal favourites of all time. But I don't think it's just that as well, because rewatching it, I just think it's really great from a technical standpoint as well. I love how it starts with Charlton Heston and the astronauts in space. And I just love Because, you know, most movies like this, you got this stereotypical hero guy who's the good guy, he was a hero you can root for. Charlton Heston is a dick in this film. He's not a nice guy. He's almost an anti-hero, really. So you end up rooting for him because he's the human, you wanted to get out of this horrific situation, but at the same time, he's an asshole at the beginning of this film. And throughout the film, really. And I kind of like that. It just goes completely against a conventional blockbuster storytelling in that he's not a traditional hero guy at all. He's a not very nice guy at all. And I kind of like that. I like the fact that he's just a bit of a dick and he's so nihilistic and he just absolutely doesn't care about his species at all. He's like, yeah, whatever, and he doesn't mind that he's leaving the human race and Earth at all. He doesn't care. And I love all that between the irrationals at the beginning of the film, especially when they land on what is Earth in the future, but they don't realise. I think they just landed on this desolate planet, and they're just talking about life and humanity, and the other guys are just so worried. Oh my God, we're going to get back home, and then Charlton Heston just doesn't give a shit, and he's just taking the piss out of them and just making fun of them, and I just love it for that. I just love the fact that he's this kind of nihilistic character who just doesn't care at all, and obviously that's completely just turned upside down. He's thrown into this crazy situation when the apes arise. But yeah, how they're just journeying across the kind of forbidden zone. And I love that moment. Okay, you know, you could say it's a little like hokey, but I don't know. I just love that moment when the astronauts are planting the flag, and obviously, like I said, Charlton Heston just doesn't care about the human race at all. He doesn't care. He's left them behind. He doesn't care at all. And then he just sees the astronauts planting the American flag. It's I love it. He's like an evil villain. He's kind of like the bad guy at the beginning of the film, which I kind of like. It's just because it's just so different. He's not the traditional hero type at all. But of course, the moment when we build up to the eventual reveal of the apes, I don't think it's a long drawn out first act. It is essentially 30 minutes of them wandering around this desolate planet, not knowing what's going on. But for me, it doesn't feel that long when I'm watching it. I think it was necessary setup, because if they just got to the reveal of the apes 10 minutes in, it would have been nowhere near as impactful and as effective. But because they drew it out, where we get this eerily kind of mysterious kind of setup with them just wandering around this desolate planet not knowing what's going on. I like the fact that they take time, spend time with that, with them exploring this desolate planet. We get a real sense of the scale of this world and how it's just, you know, it's just miles and miles of just nothing. And then when we eventually do get to the reveal of the kind of the mute, animalistic humans and then the apes, it's so much more impactful. One of the best moments in cinema history, I think, when we eventually get to the reveal of the apes. We don't know what's going on. I love how it's shot. It's like the music as well, very experimental for its time, where it's like it's like all alarming. We don't know what's happening, and we see the apes on the horses, the iconic image. The new movies do it a lot, but obviously it started with the original, the apes on the horses with the guns hunting the humans, and it's like, oh my God, it really hits you. It has a really big impact on you, and that's what I love about this original film. It has the social commentary there as well, like the sequels, but whereas some of the sequels, like Conquest and Battle, maybe it's a little bit too heavy-handed, a little bit too on the nose. It's more subtle on the original film. It's definitely there, but it's so much more effective because they're in this crazy sci-fi dystopian world, but we've got these strong kind of just social, political themes and the commentary to it where you're like, wow, it really gets you thinking about our world and the real world and how these same themes and issues are playing within our world. And that's the great thing about science fiction, is what science fiction does best. It's probably one of the reasons why I've got it at number one, to be honest with you, because of how effective the social commentary is in this film, and just the whole mythic grandeur of the film. That's kind of what War comes close to me because of that. It gets the closest to having that same kind of mythic grandeur of the original, and War feels a lot more like classic Planet of the Apes than the previous two. Even though I love the previous two, War feels a lot more like a Planet of the Apes film. And the original, for me, comes in at the top spot because I think it is just the best of the series. I think it is one of the best science fiction films of all time. I just think it's a timeless classic that still holds up to this day. The makeup for me, the special effects employed within the film, they were groundbreaking and revolutionary for their time, but they still hold up to this day. They genuinely look like humanoid apes, and I believe it, I buy into it. Like I said, I don't really buy into it in Conquest and Battle too much, but I do in the original. I think it works so well. It's so powerful, so effective. Great twist ending there. One of my favourite films of all time. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I really don't like the fact that a lot of people now are just poo-pooing the original films, and even the very first one is saying, they're a bit schlocky, they're not that great. No, I love these original films, especially the very first one. I think the 1968 film is an undeniable classic. One of my favourite movies of all time. I'm rambling on and on a bit here, so I'm going to bring it to an end. I just think it's absolutely fantastic film. So there we go, coming in at the top spot on my Planet of the Apes, ranked from worst to best, is the 1968 original Planet of the Apes. And there we go, that wraps up my ranking of all the films in the Planet of the Apes franchise. Hopefully I'm going to maybe do like a deconstructing a classic of the original Planet of the Apes show. I've been wanting to do that for a while. Go a lot more in depth and do a kind of real analysis and discussion of that original film. Almost like maybe a scene by scene breakdown of that original film. I'd love to do that, so hopefully I'll get around to doing that soon. But yeah, what do you think about Planet of the Apes? It's one of my personal favourite franchises, I think, if not my favourite franchise, because even the ones that aren't that great, I mean, to both them on aside, but even some of the original sequels that aren't that great, I still kind of like, they're kind of almost like cult films, they're kind of almost like B-movie kind of guilty pleasures. Even some of the bad ones I still like. So what do you think about the Planet of the Apes franchise? How would you rank them? Let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you like this and you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to see more. And if you missed my last review, be sure to click over here to catch up on my last film review, or perhaps down here to catch up on another one of my recent videos. But with that said, I've been David O'Sullivan. I'll see you next time.